This is the start of my second reading vlog for the year, and I'm starting out talking to you on my phone because it is 10 o'clock at night. I'm in bed getting ready to go to bed, but I did just finish a book, so as I had told you in the last vlog, I want to share them with you as soon as I finish them so that it's fresh in my mind. So therefore you get me however I am, at whatever quality. But the one I've just finished was a good one. I enjoyed it. It was another Emily Henry book. I talked about a couple of Emily Henry books last year that I had read throughout 2022. And I just read another one of hers. It's called People We Meet on Vacation. And the title is slightly deceiving, but I won't say too much about that because I don't want to give too much away. But it is what I would say is a romance, romantic comedy, chick lit, along those lines. I think I didn't say yet, I rated it 5 stars because I did really enjoy it. And the main character is Poppy, as well as another character, Alex, and they meet in college, and when they first meet, it's kind of by chance, and they really don't think very much of each other until they have to take a car ride home to Ohio together, and along that car ride, they get to know each other better, and they become good friends. And Poppy is a writer for what I think is a travel magazine. So later, I should say, it kind of jumps back and forth. So later, after college, that's what she does. And so she's taking all kinds of trips all over the place all the time, but especially every summer she takes a trip for work. And on that trip, she takes Alex, her best friend, with her. So it kind of takes you through their different summers together, where they travel to, goes through their friendship, but also touches on whether or not a guy and girl can just be friends or if there's something more there. Gets into the concept of soulmates and having someone that understands you fully and completely and accepts you for exactly who you are, faults and all, and the ups and downs maybe that come with that. But yeah, overall it was an enjoyable book, had me crying a little bit at the end. If you like chick lit rom-coms, if you've read other Emily Henry books and liked them, then I think you will enjoy this one. Oh, and also I wanted to add, I am trying for February. I've never really done like a readathon or a reading challenge or anything like that, but I did decide a little challenge for myself just to kind of change things up, is that for February I wanted to focus solely on romance, chick lit, rom-com type books as opposed to my usual mysteries and thrillers. And so far that has been working out well. We're just about halfway through the month now. Oh, I didn't even say it's January. It's February 12th. And so almost halfway through the month, and so far so good with that. I know I'm only coming on telling you about one, but some will have been in the last vlog. And I'm currently also listening to an audiobook that I will share with you. So February will be filled with romance, as that seems fitting. But now I'm exhausted, if you can't tell by my voice, so I'm going to head to bed. Good morning. It is Tuesday. I had yesterday off. It's throwing me off. It's Tuesday, February 21st, and I'm getting ready to head to work, but I have another book to share with you. But first, let me show you what it's doing outside. It's snowing, which I was not expecting, but I should expect because it's still February. But we are in the season where it's spring one day and back to winter the next. I've even been seeing a chart that talks about kind of northeast weather and how we have a false spring or fool's spring, and then
all these different changes before it's really spring. If I can find it, I'll put it up on the screen for you, but that's what's going on right now. So I'm gonna have to go clean off my car, but I wanted to tell you about this book real quick. But I'm gonna move so I can put the camera down because I've noticed that this camera can be a little bit shaky even when it's being handheld on the tripod. The book I just finished was an audiobook. It's The No Show by Beth O'Leary, and I rated this book 3 stars because I found it difficult for me to get into it. Even though it had 3 different narrators, one for each character, and usually those I find more engaging, I was still finding myself having difficulty getting into it and really wanting to listen and, like I said, being engaged. So we're following 3 women, Jane, Miranda, and Siobhan, and they are all being stood up, and it's all around Valentine's Day. And so it kind of goes through their relationships, why they're being stood up, how that affects them, who they're being stood up by, all of this. But I don't want to say too much or give too much away because I will say that this book was surprising. It's written different than other things I've read, and it did surprise me in some ways. And it's hard for me to say whether or not I recommend it because the first probably 3/4 of the book was so difficult for me to want to keep going back to and getting through, or I shouldn't say difficult, but it wasn't like some where I'm like, ooh, I want to find out what happens. It was just kind of like, okay, I'm listening to get through this. But I will say about the last quarter of it, I found myself being very engaged and enjoying it more so. But I don't know if you can recommend a book only based on the last quarter of it. So I guess I'll leave it up to you. If you like rom-com type love stories, then this might be one for you. And who knows, you may have a different opinion of it than me. You may love the entire book. But that's just how I felt about it. And I will say for you Harry Potter fans out there, the voice that narrates the character of Siobhan is the same actress that played Luna Lovegood in Harry Potter. So if you're looking for a little Harry Potter touch there, you can listen to her voice. But I guess that's all I really have to say about that one because, like I said, I don't want to give too much away, don't want to spoil it. But check it out if you think it would be interesting to you. And now I have to head off to work. Today is Monday, February 27th, and I have another book to tell you about. In fact, it's 2 books, and that's because I had started the Bridgerton Collection Volume 2, which is books 4, 5, and 6, but the book was going to be due back tomorrow, and to be honest, I wasn't super interested in the 3rd story. So I just did the first 2, and those are available as separate books, so I'm just counting them as 2 separate books, but I did fully read both of them. Book 4 is Romancing Mr. Bridgerton, which is Colin and Penelope's story. So if you've seen the show and are familiar with that, you'll know those characters. And that's also what the next season is going to be about. So I wanted to make sure that I read the book. Even though the show isn't completely following the books, I just kind of wanted to read the book before the show happened. So that was good, pretty much what I expected it would be. And the other one was, what's it called? I want to say With Love, Sir Philip. If you can't tell, it's another right before bedtime because that's usually mostly when I'm reading. So I just finished now, but it's bedtime, so I'm quite tired, as I'm sure you can tell. Yes, book 5 is called To Sir Philip with Love, and that is Eloise's story, and that was interesting because I had no idea about where Eloise's story would go since we haven't gotten to that in the TV show yet. And I enjoyed it because I didn't know what would happen with Eloise, but I will say there were certain parts of it that I really liked.
and then certain parts that I did not like so much. And I understand that I have to keep in mind the time that the story was made, or the time that it takes place rather, but even so, I just wasn't okay with some of like the attitudes that the love interest of hers had, and some of his expectations, and her just kind of being okay with that. Some of that I wasn't thrilled about, but otherwise a good story. I rated them both 3 stars individually. And if you're a fan of the show or like romance books, I think you might like these. But now, for some reason, I'm getting all stuffed up and just am very tired. So I'm going to get some good sleep, and I will talk to you later.
I had one thing that I forgot to say about the Bridgerton books the other night because I was so tired. It just slipped my mind, but I remembered it last night and made a note to tell you about it this morning. So when I was reading the Penelope and Colin book, I sometimes was trying to get through it as I was falling asleep. And in order to try to get further through it, I also downloaded the audiobook of that because I thought, well, maybe if I listen to the audiobook while reading it at the same time, it will help me to focus on it better and retain what I'm reading and stay awake and all that. And it was interesting because I've never tried that before. I've never done the audiobook with the reading of the book at the same time. And I could see how people would really like it. For me, at least for this book, it didn't really work because I don't think I really read fast, but maybe it's different when you're reading in your head versus out loud, because I know reading out loud would probably take more time to form the words and all of that. But I found that the narrating wasn't going fast enough, so I kept ending up reading ahead in the book than where it was narrating with me, because, I don't know, reading at their pace, I felt like it was a bit too slow. And I would try speeding it up, like putting it on 1.5 times speed, 2 times speed, and about 2 times speed was enough to be at my pace. But then it just made the narration sound weird because they're talking like this so fast and loud and high and whatever. So it made it not so enjoyable. So I may try that again at some point, but at least for this book, it wasn't really working for me. But let me know, do you ever do that? Do you ever have the audiobook going along with as you're reading? So it's kind of narrating to you as you read along with it? Let me know. All right, that's the update.
It is Tuesday, March 7th, and I got home not too long ago, but I was so close to finishing my book, so I sat down to read the last little bit so that I could talk to you about it. And this is the first physical book that I've read for this year, and this was one I got when I was down in Florida with my mom. We were at thrift stores and found this book on big discount. So it sounded interesting to me, and I thought I would give it a try. It's The Vacationers by Emma Straub, and it's basically about the Post family, and they are all taking a vacation together in Spain. And I think they go for 2 or 3 weeks during the summer, but it takes you through kind of their family dynamic, some of the struggles that they've faced, things that they're overcoming, and kind of shows you, or you follow them through their progress and growth throughout the vacation and the story. And I rated it 3 stars. It's a bit of a tough one for me to describe. I would just call it a basic fiction about family. It's hard for me to say what exactly I liked or disliked about it, and it's hard for me to say whether or not I would recommend it to you, which I know is probably a super helpful review. I found myself still being interested in it, found myself wanting to read it, get through it, find out what happened to all of these characters. I also don't know if you're missing out if you don't read it. I feel like there's so many other books you could read instead. So I don't know if that's helpful. I guess it's one of those that if I hadn't read it, I don't feel like I would have missed out, but I don't regret reading it and didn't find myself not wanting to finish it or anything. So I know that's probably not helpful, but that is how I feel about it. So there you go. Another book complete. And I'm sure I'll have lots more to share with you soon. Happy Friday! It is Friday, March 10th, and I'm excited it's Friday. I'm getting ready to head off to work, but I have another book to share with you. This was an audiobook, and it's called A Castle in the Clouds by Kirsten Gier, I think is how you pronounce it. And I think this might be the first book I've ever read that was translated. So it was originally written in German, I believe, and this was the English translated version. And it takes place at an old grand hotel in the Swiss mountains. And we follow the character of Sophie Spark, who is an intern at this hotel. And the name also, well, I think I heard about it originally from a booktuber, but the name also got me because we have a tourist destination, I guess you could say, here in my home state called Castle in the Clouds. Not at all the same place or what the book is based on, but just an interesting little connection there. And at first I found this hard to get into because there's so many characters to keep track of. I couldn't figure out who everybody was for a while. But as the book progressed, it picked up a little bit more. I got a little bit more invested. This book has lots of things involved in it: thieves, kidnappers, potential ghosts, attempted murders. So it does get quite interesting, and also has some funny parts. Some of the, especially when Sophie was the main focus, some things she would say or do made me laugh. There's also a forbidden cat, which made things interesting as well. So, I don't remember if I said I rated it 3 stars. If I was allowed to give books on Goodreads half stars, I probably would give it 3.5, because while the beginning was slow, I really did like the last, I guess, half quarter of the book. So it had some surprises. As I said, some things made me laugh. And the other thing that was great about it is I would recommend doing it on audiobook. Granted, I haven't read the physical book, but just based on the audiobook, I think it would be more interesting and easier for you to understand doing it that way, because there are a lot of accents. And I have to say, this narrator was amazing because she did all of the accents and you wouldn't be able to tell it was the same person. And I mean, Sophie has, I think, a Swiss or German accent. She also did Russian accents, Southern accents. So, and I think there's a few more that I might be forgetting. So she was really good at the different accents and getting into those different characters. So if you like books about old hotels, strange things going on, or somewhat of a mystery, I think you would like this, and I would recommend it to you. And hopefully I covered enough of the plot. Don't want to give too much away, but sometimes there's so many thoughts going on, I feel like I'm just spilling it all out to you. But hopefully that made sense, and I covered enough of the plot. But it was a good one, and now time for me to head to work. It's Tuesday, March 14th. As you can probably tell, it's another late night reading, and I just finished Up to I Do by Samantha March. This book is a little bit of an older one of hers, but I hadn't read it, and it seemed fitting, being a book about a wedding and the preparations leading up to a wedding. And I did enjoy it. I rated it 4 stars.
While I didn't always love the main character of Emerson, she wasn't the most likable main character. She did have her, she wasn't all bad. She had good moments as well. But it was just a fun, light book, and of course my battery's gonna die and I do not want to go out and change it. But it was a fun, light book about preparing for a wedding. I realized I luckily have my other battery, which is all charged right with me. But what I was saying is it's a book about all the preparations leading up to a wedding, kind of the hoopla and over the top things that can happen when preparing for a wedding, and how some people can get lost in that and trying to please everyone else's expectations instead of going with what they really want and what will make them happy. But one thing I really liked about this book that I did not know before starting to read it is that it is set in my home state. So that was fun and interesting. While the towns and things are made up, it was, or it does, take place in my home state. So that just gave it another fun element. Another thing to share is that the family is very rich, so money was not an issue, which also made things interesting. But it was a good, fun read if you like chick lit, books about weddings, just, like I said, light, fun, fast reads. I think that you would enjoy it. So there you go. Another book done. And now it is time for me to get some rest. It's Tuesday, March 22nd. As you might be able to tell, I'm about to do a workout, but I wanted to tell you about another book that I finished. This one's a little bit different, both in how I read it, why I read it, and all of that, because at work I was working with a student who is interested in going into voiceover work, reading audiobooks, that sort of thing. So she was looking to get some experience with it. So, and she wanted to be able to broadcast it. So it had to be a book that was out of copyright in order to record it and distribute it in that way. So this is how I found out about Project Gutenberg, a website that has a bunch of public domain books that are now out of copyright. And one of them that she was interested in doing was Anne of Green Gables. I am quite familiar with this story because growing up I watched the movies. There was a TV series on Disney Channel called Avonlea that I watched every single episode of. And then I even more recently watched the Anne series that was on Netflix, so I'm quite familiar with it. However, I never read the books. And the reason I'm counting this as a book is because I did read it along with her. So she would record a few chapters at a time because I was only with her for about 3 hours a week. And while she was reading it, I would read along, so in case she lost her place or anything like that. So not only was I reading it with her, I was hearing it, and then I reheard it as I was editing the audio. It was kind of an interesting way to get through a book, but therefore it took a lot longer than most books would, because I think we started it back in October, and I wasn't sure if we were going to finish, but we did as of today. So that's another book on my list, Anne of Green Gables. And I rated it 3 stars just because I have such nostalgia for the story, and I think it's a good classic story. But I will say, I guess I haven't read an older book in a while, or yeah, probably not since college. And the language in it, not in a bad way, but just books that were written then were written very differently. There were words that I hadn't been exposed to in a long time that they don't really use commonly anymore. So it was interesting. I don't think I need to really tell you about the story because I'm assuming most of you are familiar with it, but there you go. Another book for this year and this book vlog. It is Saturday, March 25th, and I have a book to tell you about. And it's a 5-star book. It's by Ruth Ware, and it's called The It Girl. And I've read a couple of other Ruth Ware books and really enjoyed them, and that was the case for this one as well. I finished it this morning and wanted to tell you about it. We see this book from the perspective of the main character, Hannah. She is a freshman at Cambridge, and she isn't wealthy like many of the other students who attend the school. So when she first starts out there, she doesn't feel like she quite fits in. Then she meets her roommate, April Clark Cliveden, who is wealthy or comes from a wealthy family and is kind of known as an it girl. Despite their differences, they hit it off and become friends. Because of that, Hannah is introduced to April's other friends, including Will, who Hannah had an immediate attraction to, only to find out he and April are dating, and therefore he is off limits. April isn't the easiest person to be friends with, and she likes to play kind of cruel pranks on her friends that take it over the line from being funny. Hannah also has to deal with a creepy security guard at the school. They call them something else, but I would consider them security guards. He kind of harasses her and stalks her. And I don't want to give too much of the plot of this book away because I want you to be able to enjoy it as I did. But someone ends up dead, and it follows the group around for a long time to come. This one did keep me guessing. I kept thinking, I think I know who it is. I think I know what's going on here. I figured it out. And then I would be proven wrong. And then I would think, okay, now I know. Now I've got it figured out. But it kept me doing that, kept me guessing, second guessing, all of that. If you like mystery and suspense books, I think you would really like this. If you liked other Ruth Ware books, you would also like this. And also if you like things that take place at universities or about wealthy people or that sort of stuff. I really enjoyed it. That's why I rated it 5 stars. It was one that I found myself doing other things, and I just wanted to be reading it more to find out what happened instead of doing the other things that I needed to do. So definitely a good one for you to check out. But I think that this book vlog is about at the length where I want to keep it, so I'm going to end this one here. And I will see you for the next one, probably in a month or two, depending how much I read. So I hope you're enjoying them. I'm definitely enjoying doing it this way and sharing the books with you. And I'll see you soon.